we're here tonight in the Happiness Hub, which is my YouTube channel, where I'm interviewing lots of different experts on various topics that can help with around anxiety. And you don't have to have anxiety to be listening to this, because you're going to get a lot of tips on how to sleep better so that you can have a better life. I'm here with Kelly Murray, and Kelly is a pediatric and adult sleep consultant. You have you're all over the internet at the moment, Kelly. I see you on 3 different Instagram channels, on Facebook, and you've got your website. And I know that you're involved in a lot of different things. So thanks very much for joining me here. As I mentioned before to you, what I do with nutritional therapy is I work with women with anxiety, and women are twice as likely to be experiencing anxiety than men are, which is why that's my focus, because I think there's a real need, especially with what's going on in the world today. It's like increasing stress. And we all know that sleep, or if you're not sleeping well, that also has a big effect on increasing your anxiety. And I can even say from a personal experience, I didn't get a lot of sleep this past weekend, and I started feeling sick. I started, my stomach started acting up, it was all kinds of things. And I was like, I cannot wait to be interviewing Kelly on Monday.
I love it. Yeah, it definitely does impact every facet of your life when you're not sleeping well, physically, mentally, and emotionally.
Yeah, completely. Yeah. And the fact that I noticed it in such a short period of time after having 3 nights of not sleeping well, not for having bad habits, but just, I just couldn't sleep for various reasons. But so now you're based in Chicago right now, the home of the Ferris wheel. And it's 11:30 in the morning where you are. It's 6:30 p.m. where we are in Amsterdam. Tell me, what's the weather like over there?
Cold, but it's sunny, so I'll take sunny any day.
That's good.
Yeah, usually January, February, it can be pretty gray here. So although it's cold, I'm just happy that we have some natural sunlight today, because as we were talking about earlier, it really can impact your mood and your sleep if you're not getting good, adequate light exposure.
Yeah, exactly, which is a problem for us here. Amsterdam is a lot further north than Chicago. And so we have much shorter days at the moment, and they're still going to get shorter until the end of December. And so at 4:30, it's really starting to get dark, and we don't get sunrise until about 8:30, and it gets,
Oh, wow. I had no idea it was that late.
Yeah, so it really makes a difference. So I'm constantly speaking with my clients about getting outside, not just being at home working inside, sitting near a window, going for a walk, all the different things that you can do to improve your sleep. But I know you can take us a little bit deeper and give us some good advice. So can you tell us a little bit, how did you get involved in being a sleep consultant and also helping babies and adults and children?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I started my journey into sleep with my son, Braden. He's my second. He was just a stage 5 clinger. He wanted to be with mommy all the time. And I was feeding him and rocking him to sleep, which worked well for my daughter. I was able to do that and put her in her crib, and she would sleep all night. She was just a really, really good independent sleeper. But then my son, it didn't work too well for him. He was up every couple hours. And I was very afraid to do sleep training, because you just hear about all the crying that happens when you teach a baby how to sleep independently. And, I thought that it was going to harm him emotionally. And so I just kind of, kept up with the waking up every couple hours to get him back to sleep until he was about 9 months old. And luckily, my pediatrician recognized that we were both severely sleep deprived. And he talked to me about the importance of sleep and the fact that there's methods of sleep training that don't involve, extinction, where you have to put your baby in the crib, walk out, and not come back, that you can support them during the process. And talk to me about all of the risks, the health risks associated with sleep deprivation. And I just had that light bulb moment, because I then saw the toll it was taking on not only myself, but my son and our entire family. And so I decided to sleep train and found a supportive technique. And within 3 days, he was sleeping on his own, sleeping through the night, and our whole lives changed.
Unbelievable.
He changed. He just had a lot more energy. He wasn't as clingy. He was eating better, in a better mood. He was always a happy baby, but he was even happier. And then, of course, the change in me was profound. I had so much more energy and patience, and I was a much more enjoyable person to be around. So I decided soon after that to become certified as a pediatric sleep consultant and help other families teach their babies to sleep better and using a more supportive method. And I thought that when I opened up my own business, that it was going to be less stressful than working a corporate job. That was one thing that appealed to me. But then, having your own business, especially being a new entrepreneur, is very stressful at times, especially when you're starting to grow. And I didn't have very good boundaries in place, and it started to take a toll on me. I had really bad anxiety, which then manifested into some severe sleep issues. And here I'm a sleep consultant, and I'm telling families how important sleep is, and I'm not getting adequate sleep myself. I was waking up every night at 3 o'clock in the morning, taking hours to fall back to sleep. And sometimes I wouldn't fall back to sleep at all. So I decided to heed my own advice. And I worked with a sleep coach who focused more on behavioral interventions. And that really helped, but it didn't solve my insomnia completely. I was still having some bad sleep here and there, even though I was doing all the things. I was avoiding blue light, I was taking breaks, I was meditating, and I couldn't figure out why. And that's when I found Christine Hansen, who developed the Sleep Like a Boss method. And what made her method different was that she incorporated functional lab testing. And so we uncovered some physical stressors and imbalances. And once I addressed those, then I began sleeping better than I'd ever slept before. And just a big improvement with my anxiety too. So much so that I got off my anxiety medication. And again, it was just this huge, profound impact on my life. So I decided to become certified in her technique. And I've been doing it now for 2 years. And now I'm actually taking a step further and getting my functional diagnostic nutrition certificate so that I can run functional lab testing myself. So so now I've been working with adults as well as families, and I absolutely love it, because I feel like when everyone's sleeping better, there's so much more harmony in everyone's life, and they can then be and feel their best. It's about, right? You want to just be happy.
Exactly. That's the whole reason we do anything in life, right? Just to become happier and enjoy our lives more, get more out of it. And how long ago did this process start? Like, how old is your son now?
Oh, my son is now 6, and he is an amazing sleeper. He is fantastic. Yeah, I'm so glad that I did it. I think he would probably still be in bed with me today if I wouldn't have taught him independent sleep, because that's just the type of kid he is.
Yeah. Well, and also it's so interesting what you say, which I think everyone should really be able to resonate with at home, is that, you learned some really good techniques in the beginning to work with your son, and that helped. Starting your own business, you needed both reminders about getting into good sleep habits, but also to constantly build on your knowledge, right? And implement it again. And it's the same for everyone, like all of us who work in nutrition. I think it's you're just constantly checking in with yourself, like, how am I? What are my symptoms? What's going on underneath? Do I need to do another test? Should I just check on things? This is like, this is what life is, right? You go to the doctor periodically to get your bloods done, to make sure you have enough vitamin D to last you through the winter. And yeah, it's like constantly building on what you've done before and constantly improving your life, because lots of things happen throughout life as well, right? You start a business like you did, or like I did, or you have a breakup or something like that. And it's always good to know, like, okay, where do I go back to? What kind of tests can I do? And functional testing is something that you're doing a lot with your clients, will be soon yourself, and that I also do. And so tell us a little bit about the functional testing and what it tells us to do with sleep.
Yeah, so it really makes a big difference, because I find that a lot of my clients who come to me, they have already incorporated a lot of behavioral modifications, because you can find a lot of that information online, and everyone knows now how important it is to be mindful and meditate and breathe. And of course, compliance is always an issue. It's always helpful to work with a coach to keep you honest. But at the same time, you could be doing all these things to help yourself emotionally and mentally. But if you're physically depleted, or if there's a physical stressor, it's not going to move the needle. You need to uncover, what's going on underneath that is contributing to your high cortisol levels. Usually, if you're not sleeping well, one of the main root causes is that you have high cortisol. And it's not just mental and emotional stress that causes high cortisol levels, but you can have, say, an issue with your gut and gut infection, or a parasite or dysbiosis, or maybe you're eating something that you're sensitive to that's causing inflammation. And then whenever we're inflamed, our bodies produce cortisol as a response, and cortisol is the alert hormone. So if you have really high levels of cortisol, then that can impact your sleep. Especially people who have a hard time staying asleep. It's usually caused by some sort of issue with cortisol overnight, where maybe you have a gut infection, and the pathogenic bacteria or parasite, they're nocturnal, more active at night. And so you're going to experience more inflammation, and then your body's going to kick up the cortisol, and then you're going to have a hard time staying asleep. So it's really fascinating, all the different like physical root causes when it comes to insomnia. And it's usually not just one, because it can be a cascade effect. Say you have a gut infection, and all of a sudden your cortisol levels are really high, and that's going to wreak havoc then on your adrenals. And, if your adrenals are stressed for a long period of time, then your body is going to stop producing so much cortisol as a protective mechanism. And then your adrenals become dysfunctional, and your cortisol levels are lower. And then that could, then impact your immunity or your mineral balances. So it's just, like I said, there's usually not one thing physically that's causing insomnia. It's usually multiple things, and they're all interrelated. So the lab tests really help us to uncover those physical stressors and imbalances that can be contributing to your insomnia, and just help us to identify areas of healing so that we can improve your health and get you back to sleeping.
Exactly. And there's it's interesting what you were talking about with cortisol, because in the beginning of stress, it can be really high and be stimulating you awake. But the longer it goes on, if it damages your adrenals, you said, then you might have low cortisol because your adrenals don't produce so much, right? And so what would someone look like in their sleeping patterns in the beginning compared to when their cortisol is low?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the biggest signs of having dysfunctional adrenals is that you're under a lot of stress. However, your cortisol levels aren't high. So a doctor may take, a traditional doctor may take blood tests and find that your cortisol is at the appropriate level. Well, really, if you're under stress, you should have high levels of cortisol. So if your cortisol looks normal, but yet you're under stress, that can mean that you don't have a lot of reserves, and your body isn't responding appropriately to stress. And so you
Yeah.
feel really run down. And
Yeah.
then what happens is adrenal starts to take over as well. And then, 3 o'clock in the morning, your body may start kicking up some adrenaline because of your low cortisol, and then that can wake you up.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
not, may not necessarily be the cortisol at that point if your adrenals are dysfunctional. It's the adrenaline that's
Yeah.
then waking up. And adrenaline is even, more potent than cortisol when it comes
Yeah.
to making you feel alert and wired.
Yeah, exactly. And I totally recognize that because as some of our listeners will know from hearing my stories, when I was studying nutrition, I had exactly that. Like I was not sleeping. First of all, it was hard to fall asleep, and then I would wake up at 3 a.m. and not be able to get back to sleep, and sometimes be awake the whole night and I felt like my heart was just racing. And so it had to be a combination, first of all, in the beginning of the cortisol, but then adrenaline also pushing me awake. And well, we know how motivating adrenaline is, of course. So yeah, I definitely experienced that.
Yeah, that's what happens when a child runs into the middle of the street and you run faster than you've ever ran in your entire life. It's because you have that adrenaline behind you. So
Yeah.
it starts producing adrenaline at 3. There's no way you're going to be able to stay asleep.
No, exactly. And so you had mentioned sleep hygiene before. What else can kind of affect our sleep? What other factors are playing a role?
Yeah, there's so many things. Whenever I'm working with a client, the first thing we do look at is sleep hygiene.
Mm.
Are you sleeping in a cool, dark, quiet environment? Darkness is so important because our eyes have little neurons that collect data from the sun, and it tells our bodies that it's time to be awake and to produce cortisol. And those little neurons are actually more sensitive at night. So if
Oh
there's even
yeah.
like a little bit of light in your room, then that can interfere with your circadian rhythm and the amount of melatonin your body's producing, because if your body thinks that it's daytime, it's not going to produce as much melatonin and produce more cortisol. So that's really important, just making sure that your room is really dark, cool. Our body temperature has to lower by 2 degrees in order for melatonin to start kicking in. It's another external sign that we take from our environment to know that it's nighttime. If you think about it, if we're sleeping outside, the temperature lowers, and so does our body temperature. And then, of course, quietness is so important, because if there's a noise that's present overnight that wasn't there at bedtime, that's going to be alarming. Our bodies are very sensitive to any changes in our environment. There's something that is present overnight that wasn't present at bedtime, that's a sign that there could be a predator, there could be danger, and that's going to kick in the fight or flight reflex. So that's like the first thing, is just making sure your environment is set up for sleep, making sure you're doing all the things that you should be doing before bed, avoiding blue light a good hour before you're going to go to sleep, because that those are the rays that the sun produces early in the morning. The light is more blue. So again, that blue light is going to confuse your body, and you're not going to have the appropriate melatonin response. And just, unwinding before bed, not, go and expect that you're going to jump into bed and fall asleep.
No.
So that's just like step one, is just getting your sleep hygiene in a good place.
Yeah.
And then after that, I really like to look at someone's day. Do they have back-to-back meetings? Are they taking any time to rest throughout the day? Are they going for walks, maybe midday, just to break things up and get outside and get some sunlight? Because although we want to avoid light at night, we need as much light exposure during the day for our circadian rhythm to function correctly. And then just also, the messages that you're telling yourself about your sleep. Sometimes what happens is you're not sleeping well. You begin to have this negative self-talk about your sleep. And so sleep becomes this like thing that produces a lot of anxiety. And if you become anxious about your sleep before you go to bed, then that's going to, again, kick up the cortisol and lead to even more sleep issues.
Yeah, it makes it much worse, right? And what you were saying about the light, that it's more blue in the morning. I mean, if you just look outside at a sunset, that's like the light getting you ready for bed, right?
Yeah.
It's much more warm. It's more reds and oranges and softer light, and then yeah, that's preparing you for bed. So wouldn't it be ideal if we all went to bed as soon as the sun set?
Yes, it would be, instead of watching television,
Yeah.
work, on our
Yeah.
phones, surfing social.
Yeah.
All those things can really impact your sleep because we're not supposed to be exposed to that much blue light before
Yeah.
bed. And the ironic thing is that those little neurons in your eyes are even more sensitive to blue light at night than they
Yeah.
are during the day.
That's so interesting. Yeah. I hadn't heard that before actually. So that's really nice to learn that as well. And what about other things like environmental factors? Is there anything in that area that can affect you? I mean, obviously, like how you're living your life, or whether you're relaxing during the day, but what about things like toxins, or do you deal with those kinds of things as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Because if you're exposed to toxins, chemicals in the cleaning agents that you're using around your
Mm,
house, that again can cause inflammation. And whenever we're inflamed, our body's going to produce cortisol.
mhm.
Also, EMFs can interfere with your sleep,
Yeah.
electromagnetic frequencies. So I always recommend that my clients turn off their router overnight, make sure
Yeah.
that their phones are on airplane mode, so that they're not exposed to as many EMFs, because
Yeah.
it's energizing, those EMFs, and stimulating,
Yeah.
and interfere with your brain waves and your brain's ability to shut down and get into that nice, like, meditative state.
Yeah.
So those two things play a huge role too.
Okay.
It's all about kind of trying to get back to nature, how we're supposed to live, right? We're
Yeah.
not supposed to be using all these toxic products. We're not supposed to be exposed to chemicals.
Yeah.
Uh,
I mean, think about, what my grandmother used to clean the house with was vinegar or baking soda, or, these things that are really inert and not causing any harm or leaving residues behind, and things that you can get in your skin and soak into your skin, because it's not only like what we're breathing in, but also whatever comes through our skin and what we're eating, right?
yes, yes, yeah. I highly recommend, if possible, eating a mostly organic diet.
Mm-hmm.
Pesticides can cause
So many.
inflammation and cortisol, and it also disrupts your microbiome and can lead to dysbiosis.
Yeah.
And gut health is so important when it comes to sleep, because that's where the neurotransmitters are being made.
Yeah.
70% of your melatonin is made in your stomach, because that's where serotonin is produced. And serotonin
Yeah.
is a precursor to melatonin. So
Yeah.
if your microbiome is imbalanced, then that can lead to sleep issues as well.
Yeah, exactly. And GABA is right up there as well. Not as much as produced in the gut, but still you have like 60% or something like that produced in the gut. So that's the neurotransmitter that helps us calm. And often people that are anxious are short in GABA, as well as serotonin and melatonin. So
Yeah, exactly. And I'm sure you talk about it a lot on your podcast, but the gut brain connection, that
yeah,
vagus nerve, the fact that our microbiome actually has its own nervous system that communicates with our brain through the vagus nerve. So
exactly.
another reason why gut health is so important when it comes to sleep.
Yeah, yeah, it's really huge. Yeah. And you had mentioned to me at one point something about chronotyping, and what is it, and how do you use it in your clinic?
Yeah, so your chronotype is your genetically predetermined rhythm of your sleep and awake cycles.
Mm-hmm.
And it can be really helpful to know your chronotype so that you can make sure that you're timing certain activities to work with your natural rhythm instead of against it.
Mm-hmm.
And we used to think that there were only two chronotypes. You're either an early bird or a night owl. But now like identify more. And I'm sure that, the 5 chronotypes that we talk about a lot still don't encompass everyone. Humans are pretty complicated, but I do find that most people can identify with the 5 major chronotypes, which are the lions. They're the king of the jungle. They're the individuals that naturally wake up really early and go to bed early. They're the leaders. They get more done before 8 o'clock in the morning than most of us get done all day. We have the bears. That's the vast majority of the population. They follow more of a solar schedule, where they wake up soon after sunrise and go to bed soon after sunset. They need a lot of sleep to function.
Mm-hmm.
And our world revolves around bears because it's the vast majority of the population.
Right.
And so they're responsible for the 9 to 5 schedule. And then we have our wolves. Those are our night owls. They're the creative types that like to work on projects late at night. They tend to go to bed, midnight and after. They like to sleep in, and they have a really hard time functioning on a 9 to 5 schedule. And then lastly, we have our dolphins, which are a lot of my clients. They're called the dolphins because they have a hard time turning off their brain. And dolphins, when they sleep, they only turn off 50% of their brains. So they're very intelligent, but highly neurotic. They have a hard time sleeping because of this. And they typically, though, don't require a lot of sleep, but they think they do. And then that adds to their anxiety levels because they feel like if they can get like 8 hours of sleep, it's going to cure all of their problems. But really, with dolphins, they could probably get by with 6 solid hours. Okay. But they have to really work at making sure that they are taking time out to process their thoughts and emotions and, unwinding at the end of the day.
Yeah. And so which type are you?
I think I'm a mix between a lion and a dolphin. It just depends on what's going on in my life.
Yeah.
But I really do. I operate better when I go to bed early and wake up early. I love when the house is nice and quiet in the morning. I can get a lot of work done and just creative thinking. But then, if things are stressful, I've gotten much better at managing my stress these days, but I can go into dolphin mode pretty quickly. I just have all the ruminating thoughts and just really have a hard time turning off.
Yeah.
How about you? Do you identify with any of the chronotypes?
Yeah, I'm a little bit like you actually, that I used to say that I really could like get up early. I can also go to bed late, and I function with high energy all the time generally. But I find the older that I get, the more I'm like a lion. And I definitely recognize the dolphin in certain points in my life, for sure. So yeah, I think I was maybe born a dolphin, but I've evolved into a lion. So that's
now that you're managing your anxiety and ensuring you're taking time to process and doing all the things physically to ensure that your body's functioning correctly. You're now morphed into a lion. People ask me a lot, can you change your chronotype? And you can, but it takes a lot of hard work.
Yeah.
Especially, if you're a dolphin, I think that you have a better chance of becoming a lion, bear, or wolf if you do the right things. Whereas I think that a lion is never going to be a wolf. It's just not in their DNA. They're not going to be a person who can stay up late and sleep in. And then vice versa. It would be really hard to turn a wolf into a lion. But you can probably turn both of them into bears by timing their activities correctly.
Yeah, exactly. Because the lion and the wolf are real opposites, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So the
Mhm.
polar opposites. But, for example, I have a lot of clients who have opposite chronotypes and their spouses. And that can
Oh,
cause issues because they're like two ships passing at night. They never get to spend time together. So, we really look at their schedule and we modify some of their activities so that they can shift their schedule by like an hour or two.
yeah.
So example of that would be a lion. Lions, when they wake up in the morning, they have so much energy that they typically will exercise at that time.
Yeah.
But if they wait until after work to exercise, that can help them to stay more alert at night. Because whenever
Mm.
we exercise, our body builds heat, which is going to then delay the thermal cooling that happens at night that leads to the melatonin production. And also the exercise is going to kick up your cortisol levels.
Yeah, right. All these little tricks of the trade that help you adjust. Nice. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And then with the wolves, if they do the opposite, that's going to help them to be more alert in the
Hmm.
morning. If they, instead of hitting snooze 1,000 times, if they can wake up and even just go for a walk around the block, that could do a ton of benefits for their
Yeah.
morning energy levels.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I always say to my clients that really struggle to get out of bed in the morning, I'm like, okay, you have to like make these small shifts and try to get as much light in your eyes as early as possible, because that's what's going to really help you, right?
Oh, yeah,
Um,
absolutely. Trying to get outside that first half hour of
yeah,
the day can make a huge difference.
yeah, that first half hour is really key, right? And I think that even if you can't get out of bed, at least turn on the light next to your bed, even if your eyes stay closed, but like face the light, because as you said, it goes through your eyelids as well, right?
Yeah, yeah. When your eyelids are
So
closed, the light still penetrates those neurons.
yeah, and that'll help you at least get awake enough that you could then open your eyes, get out of bed, go outside, or at least stand next to a window and yeah, wake up a little bit more easily.
Yeah, yeah. And if they're going to stand by a window, sometimes it's helpful just to even open up a window. So sometimes what I
Mhm.
do when I can't get outside right away is I stand at our sliding door and I open up the sliding door and just stick my head out with my coffee.
Yeah.
I can get at least like 2 minutes of light. They say 2 minutes is all you need to like activate your morning rhythm and spike
Yeah.
your cortisol because the light is filtered tremendously through a window.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. And also at certain times of year, the light changes, doesn't it?
Yes, yeah, the
Mm,
distribution of the rays. Yeah, you're going to get a lot more,
yeah.
lot of less blue light in the morning in the winter than
Yeah.
compared to the summer.
Yeah. So
And we're
for
also tired in the winter.
yeah,
Uh,
exactly.
Lack of blue light exposure, natural blue light exposure. We're all getting plenty of artificial blue light
Yeah.
exposure these days.
Yeah. But some lights can actually help you both um, wake up and also wind down, right? Can you
Yes.
talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So in the morning, you want, brighter light that's more blue. So your natural lights, your LEDs contain a lot of blue lights, even your rings,
Mm-hmm.
that you use if you're on a Zoom call like I am right now. I
Yeah.
have my ring light on. They emit a lot of blue light if you have it on the right setting. But then at night, as we talked about earlier, the sunset is more amber and red tones, and that actually sends a signal to your brain to start suppressing cortisol and producing melatonin.
Hmm.
So it's nice if you have lights that are adjustable where you can change the hue from white to more amber and you put those on at night. Also, in my bedroom, I have the bedtime bulbs in my lamps. So I turn those on instead of having the
Okay.
overhead lights. And those are, more orange and yellow. And that's
Hmm.
another thing you have to be cognizant of too, is the direction in which the light is hitting your eyes. Because if the light's hitting your eyes from above, that's another cue to our brains that it's daytime.
Like
Because
it's the sun.
yeah, the sun is high in the sky.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's better at night, instead of having the overhead lights on, to use lamps. I even actually do. So after my daughter goes to bed, I jump in the bath and I use candles at night because I'm
Oh, that's
really,
so
really
nice.
sensitive. So I take a bath by candlelight. I wash my face and do my whole skincare routine by candlelight. And it
Yeah.
makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
The wattage of a candle is 1 watt, instead of
Right.
whatever our light bulbs are.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Hey, and I just wanted to maybe demonstrate a little bit about the light here because I can control this on my phone. I have two lights here. You can't really tell. They're not rings, but they're kind of a pad of light. And so at the moment, I have them on the warmer setting. And I just want to show maybe how it goes cooler. So this is more on the blue side. Can you see the difference already?
Yeah, I can.
Yeah. So, and I really feel the difference. Like it's a lot brighter and more stimulating. Yeah. So I'm just going to put them both back to warm. Yeah. And that just feels a lot nicer, like a nicer environment to be in. And at night, knowing that it's like going to help me get to sleep eventually, or at least not wake me up.
It's so fascinating how smart our bodies are.
Yeah.
All the little tiny cues that our bodies take from nature to know when to be productive and when to rest.
Yeah, exactly. And so just by knowing more and more things that can help us and beyond the sleep hygiene, but including the more we can build on better sleep, right?
Right, absolutely. So yeah, something simple you can do that relates to this recent conversation is just like we talked about earlier, get outside in the morning, 2 to 10 minutes. That's all you need, even if it's overcast. And then also if you can try to get outside around sunset, again, for 2 to 10 minutes, that's really going to help kick up your melatonin levels.
Okay, 2 to 7 minutes around sunset.
Yes.
Oh, that's really good now to know. Yeah. And can like we've talked a little bit about like circadian rhythm without actually mentioning circadian rhythm, right? Which is the rhythm of the waking and the sleeping and how our body changes. And can you tell us a little bit about that, and or how do you talk about that at work with your clients?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's really just important to understand how sleep works. That way, when you hear these recommendations, such as avoid blue light before bed, you have a better understanding of why. Have a stronger commitment level. But what our circadian rhythm is, it's the natural ebb and flow of our melatonin and our cortisol. So these hormones flow on a 24-hour rhythm naturally, but then they're also influenced by external factors like light and body temperature. But what should happen is we wake up, we're exposed to lights, it's warmer, our body temperature rises because we get out of bed, we start being active, and our cortisol levels increase. And they should be the highest about an hour or two after you get up for the day. And then after that point, they start to rebound and lower. And at the same time, as our cortisol levels are going down, our melatonin starting to creep up. So it's like a seesaw effect. The higher our cortisol is, the lower our melatonin is, and then vice versa. So then by the time evening rolls around, our cortisol levels should be low and our melatonin levels should start kicking up. And they should be, at the highest point somewhere around like midnight or so. And then the same thing happens, melatonin starts to tank and cortisol starts to increase. And that's why it's really important that you're managing your cortisol levels throughout the day, because if you go to bed with higher than average cortisol and our body starts to produce cortisol again around midnight, then say, 3-4 o'clock in the morning, your levels are going to be as high as they should be at 6 or 7. And that is going to lead to difficulty staying asleep.
It's going to really interrupt it. Yeah. And so you're never going to really have high cortisol and high melatonin because they're a little bit opposite. They work opposite in their production,
Correct.
right?
Correct. But that differential may not be as great as it should be.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, you find with a big spread
Yeah.
between cortisol and melatonin.
Yeah. And
The other thing that's working too when it comes to sleep is your sleep pressure. So it's not just our circadian rhythm, but this concept called sleep pressure, where our bodies produce a chemical called adenosine while we're awake. And this chemical connects to neurons in our brains and inhibits brain function and makes us sleepy. So the longer we're awake, the more adenosine we have in our systems. And then as we're sleeping, our body's depleting the adenosine. And so that also contributes to that like 3 o'clock wake up that so many people suffer from, because at 3 o'clock, if your cortisol levels are a little higher than they should be, that's going to make you more alert. But also at that time, your adenosine levels are much lower than they were, say, at midnight. And that also contributes to that wake up. And then to top it all off, the sleep at that time is also much lighter. The first half of the night, we're mostly in a very deep sleep. And so in between sleep cycles, the sleep cycles when we go from light to deep sleep, there's a little tiny wake up. So that's happening like every 90 minutes. The second half of the night, we're in a lighter sleep. We're either in a dreaming state, REM sleep, or in a really light, what they call non-REM sleep. And so in between sleep cycles, when you have these little wake ups, you're going to be more alert to begin with because you're coming out of a lighter sleep. So it's like this trifecta, higher cortisol, lower adenosine, and then the lighter sleep that leads to those dreaded early morning wake ups.
Yeah, right. And so now that you've mentioned adenosine, it just reminded me that like, I'm having to travel to Canada sometimes when I come back. And actually when I go there, I have longer days because of the travel times and the time of day you do travel. That means that you end up spending a very, very long day, rather than the normal, 2/3 of your day that you're awake. It ends up being much, much longer. And then your adenosine accumulates. So, and it just keeps accumulating until you end up going to sleep, right? It's like, who was it? Matthew Walker, who wrote Why We Sleep.
Yes,
he
correct.
talked in great detail about this, and I find that so fascinating. So it's really interesting that you mentioned it and are bringing it up, because I think a lot of people over here can be that are listening to this will be doing a lot of traveling, going cross Atlantic, and maybe traveling for work. That's starting to pick up again. And these are things to be aware of as well, and how that might affect your sleep too.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why you can somewhat make up for lost sleep. Because if you're not getting enough sleep and you're carrying a sleep debt, that means that you have a lot of adenosine that has accumulated in your system. And then if you get a really good night's sleep, then you work off that adenosine. However, you can never truly make up for that lost sleep, because every phase of sleep has its own benefits to us physically and mentally. So you're missing out on that repair because you didn't get adequate sleep, but you can definitely work off the sleep debt that you accumulate.
Yeah.
You don't feel exhausted.
Yeah. And that's really good to know, that you should be trying to sleep well all the time. Like, don't let it go on too long, but you can recover some of that sleep debt.
Yes,
right?
yes, correctly. You can definitely rebound from the sleep debt that you've accumulated, but at the same time, if you're missing out on the different stages of sleep, for a few nights in a row, then that's definitely going to impact like your physical, mental, and emotional health, and you really can't reverse that.
Yeah. And that's what I was experiencing this weekend. Not sleeping well for 3 nights in a row. I started feeling it in my body in a big way, and was starting to get grumpy and my digestion wasn't working well. And, I was like, I need sleep. I really need to have a good night's sleep, which I did have last night, and it helped a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, it makes such a huge difference. I was actually reading a study that showed that even after one poor night of sleep, it changes the composition of your microbiome.
Yeah. Amazing. Amazing. This is really a huge area, right? Like a field of study that has been growing and growing as we learn more and more and see more and more how connected the microbiome is to our mood, anxiety levels, and affecting the sleep, as you say. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's so fascinating. It's wonderful that people are investing more in this research so we can learn more and more, because I suspect we only know like a tenth of what we need to know about gut health, but it's probably something we've known for eons. If you think about some of the phrases in our vernacular, I have butterflies in my stomach, or I have a gut feeling. I think, we've known that there's some sort of gut-brain connection.
Yeah, exactly. And so you must be advising your clients on how to improve the gut microbiome and help their sleep ultimately as well. And because you said that you're doing lots of functional testing, like what I do. Yeah. And so
absolutely. So the GI, most of my clients all of my clients who choose my level 2 package, where we include the functional lab testing, we run a GI map so that we can analyze the composition of the microbiome to see if there's dysbiosis or fungus overgrowth or perhaps a parasite. And I mean, I would say probably the mass population, we all have issues with our gut, but definitely my clients, I see a ton of issues when it comes to their gut health. And once we clean up those issues, they tend to see a big difference when it comes to their sleep.
Yeah. And so do you see clients that have trouble with sleep, and then they do a gut test and it shows abnormalities on the microbiome, but they have good digestion? So
yes.
Yeah,
I have a lot of clients that they don't think that they have stomach issues.
Yeah.
But then when we run their GI map, we identify some serious issues. And once we clean those issues up and rebuild and reseed their gut, then they notice a big improvement.
Yeah.
When it comes to their sleep. Especially, I find that a lot of my clients, I don't know if there's any correlation. I don't think there's any studies out here that looked at this yet, but the vast majority of my clients have H. pylori.
Oh, yeah.
Which a third of the population is infected with H. pylori, but I see that across the board. Almost like 95% of my clients are infected with H. pylori. And once you do a cleanse to eradicate the H. pylori, they notice a big difference when it comes to their sleep. Again, this is all anecdotal.
Yeah. But that's what you're finding in clinic.
I'm finding, a big connection.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so the thing is that you could really have an imbalance in your gut of the bacteria, yeast, pathogens, whatever, not have any gut symptoms, and yet it's having an effect on your health. And the longer you kind of have these issues going on, probably the more it's going to affect different areas of your health, right?
Right, absolutely. You start to not absorb the nutrients from your foods like you should. And then you're deficient in your minerals, which are really
will affect your sleep as well.
Yeah, especially magnesium, which most people aren't getting enough magnesium to begin with.
Yeah.
And it leads to this cascade effect, and you have then more inflammation because that imbalance is present, which then is going to stress your adrenals, and then your adrenals can become dysfunctional.
And then pretty soon you're a dolphin, like you and I.
Yes. So I think a lot of people don't make that connection that sleep issue, it's actually a symptom of gut dysfunction as well.
Yeah. I was just talking to a client today, and we were discussing exactly this sort of thing, not the sleep side of things, but the anxiety and the other health issues that this person has. And they were saying, oh, but my digestion is perfect. I'm never bloated. I poop normally. And I said, yeah, but all of your other symptoms are pointing to an issue in the gut. Like that is the first thing we want to test with you. So it's like, I cannot stress how important it is. And it sounds like you think the same way, because you're incorporating that test in your all your work with your clients, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And even my
Yeah.
clients who don't engage in the functional lab testing, I have them
Hmm.
work on their gut health.
Yeah.
And you're right, just because you're not having poor digestion or stomach pains or gas or
Yeah.
issues with your bowel movements, it doesn't mean that your gut is functioning correctly. I mean, I have celiac disease,
Yeah.
and I never once had one GI symptom. The
Oh,
reason
wow.
why I discovered I had celiac is because I began to have dermatitis herpetiformis, which are blisters around your elbow. And
Oh,
then
wow.
when they did my scope, my stomach was completely eroded. And I would have never have guessed that I had issues with my stomach. But then once I started to eliminate gluten from my diet, my entire life changed.
Yeah,
I didn't
I can imagine.
realize that I was experiencing symptoms, but the symptoms were more cognitive. I had
Yeah.
lower energy. Sometimes I would be in a fog, have difficulties concentrating. And I just like chalked it up to being human, that everyone is always complaining about how tired they are, have issues concentrating. I didn't realize that I was really sick, because that was my normal.
And so good that you discovered it, because if you don't know that you have celiac, you can really suffer a lot later on because of the lack of nutrients. And it just means that so many more things are going to start to pop up, and it gets harder and harder. So the earlier you discover these things, the better it is. Yeah.
Yes, I always wonder if that's why I struggled with anxiety and sleep
Mm.
issues my entire life.
Yeah.
Whenever I became stressed, the first thing that would tank is my sleep. But now that I've worked on building up my health and my guts,
Yeah.
especially, and really focus on gut health, when I do experience a stressful moment in my life, it doesn't take as big of a toll on my sleep.
Yeah.
And, that anxiety that I usually experience under stress. All right,
That's
you
so
can't
good.
turn off the brain, the
Yeah.
monkey brain.
Yeah. That's good. Now, Kelly, you were mentioning a couple of different packages that you offer, and as you know, when I work with my clients, I do a lot of functional testing. But if they wanted to speak to a sleep consultant like you work online, and they could do testing with me and be working with me, but then come to you specifically for sleep consulting. Is that right?
Yes, absolutely. So
Yeah.
I offer what I call the mind package and then the mind body package. So with the
Mm-hmm.
mind package, we work more on your sleep hygiene, your routines, the timing of your activities, your schedule.
Yeah.
So that could be something that I can help them with.
Oh,
And it would be
excellent.
great, because if you're doing the functional testing and helping them improve their physical health, then it's a really nice marriage with what I do in terms of working on their mental health and their routines and habits and lifestyle.
Yeah, completely. And so everyone can find you on, you've got a couple of different Instagram accounts, which is Kelly Murray Sleep and also Kelly Murray Adult Sleep. So the first one was with babies and children. So if someone's looking for some specific help there, but you also deal with the adults, and you give lots and lots of information there. I was watching a few videos today and over the last few weeks since we first spoke. And your website is Kelly Murray Consulting, right?
So my website for adults, it's Kelly Murray Adult Sleep, just
Okay.
like my Instagram handle.
.com.
.com. Yep.
Yeah.
And then also, if they're interested in sleep for their children, it's just Kelly Murray Sleep.
Okay.
Because I did start off working with only kids. And then as my business grew and I started working with adults too, I decided to separate the two.
Yeah.
because a lot of adults out there that just want to focus on their sleep
Sure. Yeah.
and not so much their children's sleep.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. That's smart. And is there anything else that you want to share with the listeners today? Any
Yeah,
last?
absolutely. You know, if you're having sleep issues, you know, there's three things that you always, you know, need to consider. Like I would first just make sure that you have good sleep hygiene. That's the first step, as we talked about before. Make sure that your environment is set up like a little cave, dark, cool, and quiet. That you're avoiding blue lights before you go to bed. That you have what we call power down hour, where you do your hygiene and you relax without being exposed to technology. That can make a huge difference.
I
And
love the
after
name.
that, if you're still not sleeping, then you need to focus on your mental stressors. So am I managing my mental and emotional stress by engaging in relaxation activities throughout the day, taking walks, being out in nature, meditating, breathing, not overbooking myself, taking time to unwind at the end of the day. And then if after that you're still not sleeping, that's where the functional lab testing can be really helpful, where you can then uncover any physical stressors or imbalances that are leading to the dysfunction in your body. Because if your body's functioning well and you're not experiencing mental and emotional stress, you should be able to sleep well. And if you're not, that means that there's something hidden that you need to uncover.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's a real process, isn't it? Like trying something, seeing how that works, keep improving, keep digging deeper and deeper, right?
Yes,
Excellent.
absolutely. Because it's not something that you just have to accept. There's always a reason.
No. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Don't live with symptoms like that, right? Not being able to sleep or waking up or whatever else. Like with you discovering that your skin issues had to do with the gut issue, which also helped your anxiety and sleep. So amazing connections to be made, right?
Yeah,
Fantastic.
absolutely. So just don't just succumb to the fact that you're not a good sleeper. Your body is designed to sleep and you need the sleep to feel and be your best.
Excellent. Well, thanks so much for joining me, Kelly. I really appreciate it. And we'll be sharing the video by email to those people that couldn't make it today.
Thank you. Sleep well.
You too.